Welcome to App Stories, a weekly exploration of the world of apps. Today's show is brought to you by DevonThank and Solver. I'm John Voorhees, and with me is my co-host, Federico Vitici. Hi, Federico.
Hello, John. How are you?
I'm doing all right. You know, way back in the early days of App Stories, we shared our iPad screens. And so today we thought we would share our iPhone home screens. What do you think?
Was that way back?
It was kind of way back. Is anything really way back? I mean, we've only been doing this about 13 months, so. but we have traditions now. We have history. Yes, it was way back in the teens, maybe.
Okay, so we're doing iPhone. We're doing iPhone home screen, which is fun. Why don't you start by apologizing for all the apps that you have on your iPhone?
Are we going to go there right out of the box, Federico?
I'm just looking at so on the home screen, right, you have page indicators. So I'm just looking at your dots, and you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 pages of apps, whereas I have 3.
Congratulations, you only have 3 dots. Here's the thing. Okay. I've been busy, Federico. I don't know. It's a disaster.
Have you been
now.
8 home screen pages busy?
I think so. The home screen is the only screen that I actually manage. The rest of them are kind of a disaster. There are a lot of folders. There are a lot of random apps that I've downloaded from the store for the club. They're very random betas. Sure. There's lots of stuff. Lots and lots of stuff. And on the plane to San Jose for WWC, I plan to actually manage that.
You're not going to. I already know you're not going to. This will never get fixed. But okay, sure. So
right, I try, but something has to give once in a while.
Besides this, is there any other opening statement that you would like to share with us?
I want to share my overall theory on home screen organization.
Okay.
So it's important to know, first of all, that I'm left-handed. So I usually have my phone in my left hand. So the apps that I use the most are kind of in an arc from the bottom left-hand corner. So you can see what those are. And it's things like Safari, iMessages, Slack, Tweetbot, Spark, Overcast, Music, Workflow. And right now I have there's a couple of betas in there that wouldn't normally be in there. But those
Mr. Fancy with your betas.
Yeah, I know. So those are the common ones that I use. The rest of the screen is organized kind of by function and kind of by frequency of use, but it's more of a loose knit kind of thing. You'll see, for instance, I've got Test Flight and the App Store in there, but they're separated by my app, Blink, mainly because the App Store and Test Flight are the same color, and sometimes they're hard to distinguish at a quick glance, so I have that as the separator. And Blink doesn't really need to be on my home screen, except that it's my app, so I want it to be on the home screen, so I put it there. Okay. I guess that's kind of my broad brush organization of the home screen.
I already want to ask you, because you mentioned the betas, I need to... so Pocket Run is the new game by Zach Gage,
right?
Is that correct? Agenda, right? So it's we reviewed Agenda on the Mac, and it's coming to iOS. You need to tell me, because I'm also on this beta, and I was playing around with it last night. You need to tell me, what do you do with Agenda? Because it feels like something that I want to use, but I don't know how.
Let me explain a couple of things. First of all, I don't have a full home screen full of apps that are must-have apps. So I usually leave a couple of slots open, maybe 2 or 3. And oftentimes when there's an upcoming release coming within the next week or 2, I'll drop the beta in there. And that's the case for both Pocket Run and Agenda. I don't expect I like Pocket Run a lot. It's not going to stay on the home screen. I just generally don't put games on my home screen. So that will move, but it was there because I was playing with it and testing it. And it's just a nice reminder to go in there and fiddle around with the app if I'm testing it before I do a review. And that's why Agenda's there right now.
Okay.
I think Agenda has a lot of potential. I mean, when I reviewed it on the Mac, my number one knock against it was that it wasn't on iOS, because I immediately, when I started using it, because it's kind of a calendar-based note-taking app. It reminds me a little bit of Bear in terms of you're doing markdown type note-taking, but it's got a calendar component. And so it's really helpful for someone who has a lot of meetings or other calendar events to keep things in kind of a chronological order, if that's how your mind works in terms of organizing things, to keep your notes organized. But when I used it on the Mac, when I did the original review, I very quickly ran into the situation where, oh, that note's an agenda. I can't get to it right now because I'm on my phone or my iPad. But now it's coming to iOS, and I'm hopeful that it'll be more useful to me.
Yeah, I need to understand the idea of a note-taking app that is tied to a calendar is really intriguing to me. And the way that the system works, that you put notes on the agenda, which is literally the name of the main view of the app. It's
Right.
kind of like task paper meets like an actual agenda. So you say, this day I need to think about, or I need to discuss these things. It's interesting. I need to play with it more.
Yeah, I think it's good. For instance, I see it as the kind of thing that we could use for if you're taking notes for a podcast you're about to do that's going to record on a certain day, that sort of thing. I mean, it is time-based,
Oh, that's a good idea. That's a good idea.
but we'll have to see. That's how I'm going to test it out, at least initially. I didn't have time to do it before today's show, but probably by the next recording we do, I'm going to be using it for that.
Okay, so the other recent addition, I suppose, to this home screen is Obscura, which version 2 launched just a few weeks ago. Why is Obscura on the home screen next to Instagram? And are you also using the Apple Camera app? And if you do you open the camera from the lock screen or via Control Center? I have many questions you need to explain.
All right. So I like to take a lot of pictures.
Okay.
And yes, camera is not on the home screen because I usually access it from Control Center or the lock screen, more often the lock screen than Control Center. And Obscura is up there because I have tried a bunch of different manual iOS camera apps over the years, and none of them have really stuck at all. For one reason or another, I just ended up going back to the camera app. And I don't think that Obscura is going to change that entirely. It's definitely stuck with me more than any other one before, but I want to get into experimenting a little more with all the different parameters and dials and things that you can adjust for a particular picture when you're going out and taking photographs. So I've added Obscura to my home screen because it's an app that I want to use more. I have been testing it. I had been testing it for 2 or 3 weeks in advance of doing a review. It stuck with me more than really any other manual camera app has in the past. I really like the design. I really like the UI and how it works. And I just feel like it's time to experiment a little bit more with tweaking all the things like exposure and ISO and all the different things you can do with a manual camera app. And by putting it on the home screen, it's something I will remember to do. And it's next to Instagram, not for a particular reason other than, you see Obscura, Instagram, and Photos are all together. Those are there for convenience. That's just kind of the photography section. Instagram, I have blown hot and cold about Instagram over the years. I'm kind of more in an Instagram frame of mind lately, trying to use it more. It's a social network that I enjoy that doesn't seem to have a lot of the negativity that Twitter often has. So I've been using it. And Obscura has a really cool feature where if you go into the grid menu item, you can actually, it'll give you an overlay that's a square, so you can even use it to try to frame a particularly good Instagram picture, which is good because otherwise it's just a rectangle.
Very nice. I also need to play with Obscura more.
This episode of App Stories is brought to you by DevonThink Pro and DevonThink To Go, professional-grade document and information management for the Mac and iOS. The strength of DevonThink lies in the fact that it can handle just about any type of file. PDFs, Office documents, text files, media files, bookmarks, you name it. I use DevonThink all the time for big research projects because I love the fact that I don't have to even think about it. I just drop a document into DevonThink and it handles it. It's a way to organize all your information in one place and have it available to you at your fingertips. DevonThink Pro even lets you edit most of your files right on your Mac. With the ability to drop so many different kinds of files into DevonThink, though, search is critical, and DevonThink has that covered. It uses artificial intelligence to return only the most relevant search results for any kind of query that you might come up with. It's a powerful way to manage large collections of information that you just don't get with system-level search. DevonThink also understands that you work with other apps too. You can create special links to items in your DevonThink database and put them in another app, whether that's a calendar app, a task manager, whatever it is. You use the link and it takes you right back to the item in DevonThink. DevonThink also works with systems you might already be familiar with, like GTD. GTD is a task management system that uses a global inbox to collect tasks, which you then organize later. The same goes with DevonThink. It has a global inbox. You can drop information in and then worry about filing it and categorizing it at a later time. DevonThink Pro is also highly customizable and can be automated. Virtually everything in the app can be customized to look and feel and work exactly the way that you do. It's automatable too. On the Mac, it supports all sorts of Apple script commands, so you can automate virtually any task you can think of in the app. One of my favorite things, though, is DevonThink to Go, because it's the iOS app that puts my entire DevonThink database right in my pocket. It integrates with the Files app, so it's easy to find any particular item, and it works with the same GTD style system, so that if I'm out and have a few minutes to spare, I can go into my global inbox and I can start filing those things that I've dropped in recently. It's a great way to stay organized wherever you are. If you've ever felt like there must be a better way to organize all the information on your Mac and iOS devices, there is, and it's called DevonThink. Check it out today using the link in the show notes. If you decide to buy the Mac version, whether that's DevonThink Personal, Pro, or Pro Office, we have a special deal for you. It's 10% off if you use the coupon code AppStories. There'll be a link in the show notes to learn more, so check it out today. Thanks again to DevonThink for supporting the show.
So what else is there on this home screen? So I see, for example, count. We have agenda, drafts, notes, Ulysses. That's a list for note-taking apps.
Yes.
Okay. Which there's also working copy, but I mean that could be a note-taking because you can create text files, but I'm gonna give you a pass on that.
Okay.
What's the difference between drafts and notes for you?
So for me, notes is where research goes, things like links, especially links from Safari when I'm trying to collect things. Drafts, for the most part, is still for me a place where text starts, as I think is kind of the tagline of the app. I will use it if I'm writing an email sometimes because I have an unnatural fear of hitting send by accident early. Or I don't know, it's just like little snippets of text that aren't something that I'm ready to publish, right? I'll go in there, I'll write the text, and then once I've got it, I can put it anywhere I want because Drafts makes it so easy to move the text between it and another app. And so I'll move it to notes, or I'll move it to an email, or I'll move it to iMessage, wherever it goes. Maybe it's even a tweet for that matter. That's what I use Drafts for more than anything else. Ulysses, I don't use a ton on the iPhone, but every now and then I'll find myself out and about in town and I need to make a quick tweak to something that I'm going to publish. And so I'll do that. But that's primarily why Ulysses is there.
Okay. Is there anything else that you would like to point out on this home screen?
Yeah, I have made changes. I've moved some things off of that page, which I should mention because Day One is probably the app that's moved on and off my home screen more often than anything else because it's one of those aspirational apps that I feel like I should use more, but I don't. So I just moved it off again recently because I haven't used it in a few weeks and felt like it was just taking up space where I could free up an extra slot and throw a beta on there or whatever it is that I'm working on at the time. And then I used to have a folder of business apps, which were, banking apps and Stripe and PayPal and just kind of work type stuff. And I took that off too, because the reality is most of that sort of work that I do is on the Mac and not on iOS. I very rarely go into, my banking app or something to see what my account balance is on my phone. I usually do it when I'm sitting down at my desk. So I got that off the front page too. The only other thing that I'd mention about my home screen is that to me, one of the things when I'm on the go and walking around with my phone out of the house, it's important to have a podcast or music close at hand. And that's why music and Overcast are on the home screen. I just like to have those readily available so I can entertain myself when I'm out for a walk or commuting downtown Chicago. I don't commute anymore on a regular basis, but once in a while I go down and It's nice to have that stuff right at hand.
All right, so let's move on to my home screen.
The first thing I want to know is why you have so few pages of apps, Federico. I mean, come on. You're like the
All right.
iOS guys. You're reviewing apps. Where are all these apps?
Well, all these apps are neatly organized in folders, first of all.
Oh, all right.
So let me take a look on my second page. So the second page is where I keep utilities that I use often but don't need to be on the first screen. So for example, there's settings and phone, maps, test flight. This is the second page. 1Password, YouTube. YouTube is there because if I put it on the home screen, I'm going to use it too much. So it's there to help my restraint, maybe.
Yeah, that's good.
Shazam also right there on the second page. All this stuff that I use on a regular basis, but I don't need to have super quick access to. And also there's a row of health apps. So like health, gyroscope, and heart watch all here. And I have something like 12 folders on my third page. So that's why I'm trying to keep it organized. And the secret is anything that I'm testing doesn't go on the home screen, but it goes into a folder called testing. So that's really an original name, but also that's why I have only three pages. It drives me nuts when I have too many pages. I really don't like it. So
yeah,
that's why.
Well, I access most of my apps via search, so I kind of just let it go. I want to add. Well, I'll let you finish anything you want to say about your home screen, but I have a lot of questions.
Okay, so the things I want to say are I replaced Apollo, the Reddit client, which is now on my second page, because I want to use Instagram more. So Instagram is taking the place of Apollo in the top right. I'm finding that Instagram doesn't make me feel the constant sense of dread and sadness as Twitter these days, especially when something political is going on in the United States. And Instagram is a fun place to hang around. I'm using it a lot for two things. One is sharing, really. Just being able to share more about what I'm doing, taking pictures. And I'm using Instagram stories a lot, which actually there's three reasons. The second one is I want to keep up with my friends more. And Instagram stories have basically completely destroyed Snapchat from this point of view. Everybody's using Instagram stories now. Like every single person I know is using Instagram stories. So it's a great way to keep up with other people in my life. And finally, and this may sound totally weird, I use Instagram as most people use Pinterest. So to discover stuff that I want to save or stuff that I want to buy or stuff for inspiration. So for inspiration, I mean tattoos. So I'm following a bunch of tattoo artists and I'm saving ideas in a collection. So Instagram lets you create collections.
Right.
It's like Pinterest, but only a bit simpler, of course. But you can bookmark stuff and save it into a folder in your account. So I'm saving a bunch of tattoo ideas for later this year. And also, I gotta tell you, I bought something that was an Instagram ad.
Did you really?
Totally worked. I'm waiting. It's a custom ring that I had made. It's a hexagon ring that I had made from this Danish company that is shipping this silver ring to me this week, in theory. Yeah, it was a suggestion on Instagram, and it was totally my style. So I've become one of those people clicking on ads, buying things.
I find the ads on Instagram really annoying and try
why? No,
I don't know. I don't like ads, and I have to try to get over this. But I think anything where I'm being served content algorithmically kind of bothers me. I maybe it's just because I like blogs that I like to see. I like to see everything, and I like to see it in chronological order. I don't like the fact that I go to Instagram and there's this constant mix of things that are basically out of order.
I think it got a lot better lately because they turned down the dial on algorithmic suggestions in the timeline a lot compared to previous months. But also I have this theory that the more you use it, the more you check it every day, the less you're gonna see the algorithmic suggestions. So because I'm opening Instagram quite frequently, it's basically a chronological timeline at this point.
So you're telling me I should spend more time on my iPhone, is that right?
That's a trick question.
It is a trick question.
No, I'm not telling you that.
All right. This episode of App Stories is brought to you by Solver, the Mac and iOS app that helps you work things out. Solver is part text editor, part calculator. The app helps you work out calculations the way you think using a combination of text and figures. One of my favorite aspects of Solver is that the text I use to describe my calculations becomes a roadmap, making it easy to go back and understand what I was doing later. With syntax highlighting, it's super easy to follow what's going on in the calculations too. It's an app that's faster than a spreadsheet because you can simply describe what your calculations are in plain English without stopping to consider things like what formulas you need to use. The process is intuitive too, approximating how you would work out a problem on pen and paper, which makes the process feel incredibly natural. Unlike pen and paper, though, you don't have to use a separate calculator because the calculator is built right into the page. Describe your calculations on the left-hand side of Solver, and the app keeps track of the math on the right-hand side, making it very easy to grasp exactly what your results are. Solver is especially good for anyone who spends more time in a text editor than a spreadsheet because the words you add on the page add context and meaning to what would otherwise be just a jumble of numbers. The app is smart too. It keeps a running total of all the lines in the document in the bottom right-hand corner. It's able to look up currency conversion rates, stock prices, commodity values for things like gold and oil too. The app handles all sorts of conversion rates, from weights and cooking units to much, much more. There are great features for students and programmers too. For example, students can use built-in trigonometry functions, and programmers can calculate values in binary and hex. Best of all, Solver is available on both iOS and the Mac, and it syncs via iCloud, which means you can start your document in iOS and then move to the Mac or vice versa. It's a great way to have your calculations at your fingertips at all time. To learn more, check out Solver on the Mac App Store and the iOS App Store. There will be links in the show notes. Thanks again to Solver for supporting the show.
The other point that I wanted to make, the important one, is that, as you may see, there's only two apps. I mean, besides messages, of course, and WhatsApp. So besides the messaging stuff, the only two apps that are allowed to show notification badges on the home screen are Streaks and Things. So essentially my two task managers. One is the personal task manager for my habits, as I described in my Second Life story on Mac Stories a while back.
Mm-hmm.
And Things is my general purpose task manager for personal stuff and work stuff.
Yeah, I was pretty proud of myself because my home screen doesn't have any notification badges on it at all. And I'm not really sure why that is. I think it was just a happy coincidence, but nothing's on there at the moment, despite the fact that I've got 8 pages of apps.
To be fair, you do have a bunch of distracting blue and orange dots next to app names, because it didn't even bother to open one of them that you just updated from the App Store. Do not try to correct this screenshot because you need to use the screenshot with the dot. So if John tries to replace the image, please know the working copy wasn't even opened. It had a blue dot next to its name.
No, it's true because I don't do a lot of editing of stories on my phone. That is true.
Okay.
All right.
So these
right.
are my main points. So ask away.
All right. I want to understand, first of all, why Tweetbot is way up in the right-hand corner.
Good question. So I don't open it often, and I know that it. I mean, I'm basically saying that I open Instagram often, and it's the very first app. But I moved Tweetbot app, so I don't open it often. It's just a psychological thing, I suppose. Tweetbot for literally years used to be in the bottom right corner of my iPhone in the dock.
Yeah, I remember. That's why I asked, because I recall that you had Tweetbot in your dock longer than I did.
It's always been there, always in the same spot. And now that spot is occupied by TimeLogger, which is my time tracker of choice.
Mm-hmm.
It was a sort of a trying to force myself, trying to change my habit of constantly reaching out to the bottom right corner to open Tweetbot and eventually just waste time on Twitter. And tell you what, it's totally working. I lost the thing that I'm just instinctively reaching out to that corner of the screen. And now I open Tweetbot when I want to, not because my thumb is automatically going there. And so that was something that worked. I tried multiple times in the past, and I never I never succeeded in changing this habit, but I've been doing this for the past couple of months, and I totally lost my tweetbot addiction from that point of view.
No, well, that's good. I moved mine out of the dock, but as you can see, I didn't move it very far out of my dock. It's in the first row, but I moved it for similar reasons because it became this weird habit where I would just, as soon as I unlocked my phone, I would poke at the bottom left-hand corner. So I moved it up in a row, and it did make a big difference, even though it's in pretty much, it's within an inch of the same reach. The next thing I want to ask you about is I noticed in this first row above the dock, you've got Slack, then WhatsApp, then photos, and then messages. And this row to me is kind of the communications row, except for photos, which is a little bit out of place there.
Yeah.
What's going on here?
Well, ideally email should be there, but the problem is I don't want to have fast and quick access to email. It's kind of like Tweetbot but from another point of view, because if I open email, I know I'm going to respond to too many people, because then as soon as I open my inbox and I see all messages, my instinct kicks in and tells me you need to respond to all these people, and so I start wasting like an hour just replying to email, which is not my job. Doing email is not my job. Only the urgent ones are necessary.
Your job is composing emails with me.
Yes, I'm quitting my blogging career to focus on collaborative email composition with other people in my life. That's what I'm doing now, and getting paid for it somehow.
We'll get a sponsor for that, I'm sure.
Sure, you can. I could do a Twitch stream where I invite people to watch me write emails.
We could have a camera on you, a camera on me, and they could see both of us composing the same email at the same time in Spark 2.
Oh God. So instead, I chose to put photos there because it's an app that I open all the time,
Okay.
and because there's this weird thing where sometimes when I take a picture, so I also open the camera either from the lock screen or from Control Center. But then if you tap on the thumbnail in the bottom left corner, it doesn't let you do all the things that you can do in photos. So when you tap on the thumbnail, then if you want to see all the photos, you need to tap all photos.
Right.
But that launches the Photos app. So at that point, I might as well just have the
Sure.
Photos app on my home screen. So that's why.
All right. I still have many questions. I'm going to focus them first on WeekCal. What's that? I mean, I'm curious because I've never quite, as much as I like the natural language input for Fantastical, I'm not entirely satisfied with it. What are you doing with WeekCal?
WeekCal, I use it for a single reason, which is the week view. It's right there in the name of the app.
Mm-hmm.
It's the best. I don't want to say the only, but it's the best week view that you can get on an iPhone. So you can cram 7 days worth of information in a single screen.
Okay.
And you can pinch out to make all the hours of the day close to each other, so you can have a bird's eye view of everything that is going on in your life. And it's amazing. It's a fantastic way to see at a glance what is going on in your week. And then, of course, there's a bunch of other things that WeekCal offers. Templates for events. You can create multiple templates. This is pretty cool, actually. So you can create auto naming rules that apply an emoji to an event if it contains a specific keyword. So if you create, for example, a dentist appointment on a regular basis in your calendar, you can have is there a tooth emoji? But if there is one, you can have the emoji be automatically displayed next to that event because it matches your condition.
I would probably use the grimacing face.
Yeah, sure. That would work also. I do that for stuff like podcasts. So I have a little microphone.
All right.
When it sees it's really fun. And WeekCal is it's kind of like if Apple Calendar was made by the same person who makes To Do. It's that kind of approach. It's got like a ton of settings. Actually, it's more like Calendar made by the iCab developer.
Oh, all right.
Got like a lot of settings, but it's really powerful once you know what you're doing with it. And again, the week view is incredible. Yeah.
All right. So I think my next question has to be about, let's see, podcasts. What is going on with podcasts?
I knew it that you were going to ask about that. Yes. It's a Siri thing, but also driven by the HomePod, I would say. It's the same idea that I shared, I think, in that story from March, the Apple ecosystem comfort story.
Right.
The idea that when I use Apple services, the more Apple devices I have, so between the iPhone, iPad, Apple Watch, Apple TV, and now the HomePod, they have first-party benefits that are precluded to third-party apps. And one of them is the ability to ask the HomePod to play podcast episodes. Now, you may ask, if Siri gains a third-party podcast or music streaming service support, will you switch to something else? And my question for podcast is, if it doesn't have any kind of weird limitation and if it works well enough, I would probably switch to something like Castro if they ever add Siri integration, because I really like the way that the triaging system works. So, with especially on the iPhone with the drag and drop, you can move episodes around.
Right.
Right now, I'm using podcasts because it's the only one that is integrated everywhere. If that ever opens up to third parties, a third-party podcast client that works with Siri, if it works well, again, it doesn't have to have any limitation. It has to be complete feature parity with the Apple Podcast app. Honestly, I don't think it will ever happen. So
Yeah.
I'm probably going to be sticking with podcasts.
All right. It's an interesting choice. I'm not prepared to go there, but I understand where you're coming from when it comes to the HomePod, because it is useful when it comes to using that device. I'll tell you, when I first got the HomePod, I asked it to play app stories, and it played some random thing about accounting.
Sure, makes sense. Yeah.
It has gotten better. It actually plays podcasts now. I consider that a win.
There's a couple of new apps that I want to point out. Of course, Spark. We did an episode about Spark, and I want to use it with my team, so that's why it's there. And also Finances. So Finances is made by Matthias Ochgatter. I think is German, so forgive me for my wrong pronunciation. It's the same guy that makes Home, the third-party app that is called just like Apple's Home app. And Finances is it's a new bookkeeping system that I'm trying for all my bank accounts, credit cards, debit cards, online accounts like PayPal. I'm trying to reconcile everything in Finances. And it's been going great so far because it's a lot of work, but I need to be more precise because of my accountant was should I say unhappy with my previous state of I was using a spreadsheet which my accountant didn't really like, and then a bunch of regulations changed in Italy, so now I need to submit my documents a lot more often than in the past. So I need to be more precise and I need to be more timely. So I'm using Finances, and it works because I love the way that it can either show you like a total amount of revenue and expenses for all your accounts all at once, or you can drill down into the individual accounts and you can see the the monthly and the weekly breakdowns. It's very nice. It looks it's got this iOS 11 aesthetic that makes it feel like a native iPhone app, and it works everywhere. It's on the iPhone, it's on the iPad, it's on the Mac, and it syncs with iCloud, and I really like it. So that's why it's there.
All right. Well, that's really nice. I wanted to ask you a final question, though.
Okay.
What is up with drafts? That looks like, is that drafts 4 that you've got down there in the dock?
Oh, come on. That's a custom icon.
You updated then.
Sure, yeah. I'm using drafts as it's this weird combination of a launchpad, like you said, where you can put something and do something with it, with that text.
Right.
But also I am kind of using it as a text editor sometimes when I don't want to create like a full draft in Ulysses.
Yep.
When I just have a couple of thoughts that I want to format in Markdown real quick and then share, I've been using it like that. And actually, I've grown increasingly concerned with the state of editorial on iOS. It hasn't been updated anymore. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if it gets discontinued at some point.
Yeah, it's been a long time.
I've been thinking, though, about recreating all my existing editorial workflows in JavaScript and native actions in drafts. It's going to be a lot of work because I have built hundreds of workflows
It's
in
a
editorial.
long summer, Federico.
But yeah, sure, it's a long summer. But maybe the more important ones, like the ones that I have to add footnotes or to modify existing footnotes, all my text editing workflows, those could be maybe migrated from Python to JavaScript if it's not a lot of work. And so we'll see how it goes.
All right. Okay, Federico, I think that's probably a good place to stop. I think it's kind of interesting to see where each of us have gone in terms of the evolution of our home screens. I want to thank our sponsors one more time. That's DevonThink and Solver. And you can find me and Federico writing over at MacStories at macstories.net. And Federico is on Twitter. He's at Viticci, that's VITICCI. And I'm at John Voorhees, JOHN VOORHWS. Talk to you next week, Federico.
Ciao, John.